I was actually reminded of this piece of scripture about 2 weeks ago, in a really strange, kind of bizarre scenario that wouldn't, I guess, usually remind you of this piece of scripture. It was before I had actually looked at the sermon today, and I hope that some of you can relate to this scenario, although it's probably likely you may not, and it's only a personal thing that I do. So I was getting the kids to school, right? Many of you have done that before, taking Charlotte to kindy. And I had Emma and Michael and Charlotte. And if any of you know Charlotte, she's very hard to keep sort of slowly walking with you anywhere. So we were going down into the kindy, and Charlotte took off. I was trying to catch her. Emma and Michael, of course, really good kids, walking beside me. But I got to the gate, opened the gate, walked into the kindy, and there was a new man standing there who introduced himself to me, right? And I noticed that Michael hadn't walked through the door yet, so that was on my mind. I had all this thing going on. And he introduced himself, said what his name was, and I introduced myself, said, "Hi, my name's Michael." And then Charlotte, standing right there beside me, said, "Silly, your name's not Michael, your name's Daddy." So she reminded me of who I was, because I'd completely forgotten. And that's a classic moment. We'll get back to that, because it's actually an important story. The first thing that came to mind after that happened was this scripture, believe it or not, which is a bit bizarre. So, what do we have happening today? Well, we have, of course, we heard the scripture. This is the third time where Jesus shows himself to his disciples after the resurrection. And it's a really kind of earthy scenario, I think. Isn't it beautiful, that piece of scripture we've just heard? We have the disciples together, a group of them, on the lake. And Peter, of course, wants to go out and fish. Peter always he doesn't have that much of a filter for what he wants to do. He's quite rash at times. And he goes out and starts fishing with his friends. They're not having a good time, I don't think. They haven't caught many fish. And they see a guy on the shore. And they don't recognise who that is. He calls out to them until the disciple that Jesus loved, I spoke about him before, recognises that it's the Lord. He says to Simon Peter, "It's the Lord." And what does Peter do in Peter fashion? Puts his clothes on this time, thank goodness, because he didn't do it last time. Jumps out of the boat and rushes to shore to see Jesus. It's great. And the rest of the disciples decide to stay in the boat and sail that back to shore. But when they get to the shore, I think the really kind of magical thing happens, in the sense that it's just so normal of a scenario. Jesus says to his friends, "Have you had breakfast? Come and have breakfast." He's got the charcoals burning. They come over to where Jesus is. He cooks the fish and offers it to them. Of course, that in itself is a symbol of Christian leadership, a sign of how Christ calls us to lead, to feed those around us, to be servant leaders, and remember what our expression of leadership is as Christian people, and our expression of power. So he has this wonderful little breakfast with them. They're all full. And then we have this scenario with Simon Peter, asking 3 times, "Do you love me?" I think we can kind of understand a little bit why Simon Peter would get a little bit frustrated with that. Any of us would, I think it's fair to say, if somebody was asking us, "Do you love me?" we reply, "Yes, we do. I tend my sheep." And they ask us 2 more times and we get a bit frustrated. And of course there's the legal side of it at that time. We ask people 3 times for their evidence, that sort of thing. There's so many ways you can come at this piece of scripture. But the more I think of this scenario with Jesus and Simon Peter, the more it reminds me of that sort of fateful night where Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard with the guards and the police, waiting to hear what was happening with Jesus. Do you remember that? We went through that during Lent, leading up to Easter. What did Simon Peter do 3 times?
Denied him.
He denied Jesus. I think it's even deeper than that. Yes, Simon Peter denied Jesus and it's an incredibly important thing that we should remember and focus on when we read that scripture. But he didn't just deny Jesus, he denied the very essence of who he was that night. He'd spent this time with Jesus, he'd put all of his faith in him. He was the one who was showing some real leadership amongst the disciples. And in this one night, he denied all of that. He denied Christ, but he also denied who he was. Fast forward for our scripture today, Jesus reminds him 3 times who he is and what his calling is to be as a disciple of Christ. Do you love me? Tend my sheep. 3 times. Not only does he remind him of what he is to do, he reminds him of who he is and restores him back to wholeness in that way. Is it fair to say that we all kind of lose ourselves at times? Has it ever happened to you? Or have you sailed through life knowing exactly who you are at all times and sticking to your integrity every second of every day? Congratulations if you have. You deserve a prize. Because I know that I haven't. This kind of losing who we are is so easy for us to do. Because it's so simple to get caught up in things that are not actually of utmost importance. It's so easy to get caught up defending ourselves or what we believe to be the important parts of ourselves, so much so that we actually forget who we are in the first place. An incredibly simple way to highlight this is when we come to church on a Sunday. You know, the old chestnut, you come to church on a Sunday, you worship God, and then between Sunday to Sunday, you almost completely forget about that and go back out to the world and live your life without a thought. Have you heard that kind of thinking before? I know I've fallen into that kind of thinking before. And every time we come back on a Sunday, we're reminded of who we are as Christian people, of what it means to worship God. But the challenge is leaving on a Sunday and allowing ourselves to be reminded day by day, minute by minute, who we are. Allowing ourselves to fall back into that form of prayer that reminds us what it means to be followers of Christ. If we look at the reading we had from Acts this morning, Jesus in our Gospel restores Peter, reminds him of who he is and what his job is. But if we look at the reading from Acts, Jesus leads Saul into the potential of who he can be. So we have this man living a life persecuting Christians, the early people of the way. And he has this incredible kind of scenario on the road. You know, flashing lights, loud noises, losing your sight. You know, this hearing the voice of God. And this is God, Christ, inviting him into the potential of who he can be, of what he is to do. I mean, unfortunately, we don't get that thunderclap all the time, right? We don't get those blinding, flashing lights. We don't lose our sight. We don't always hear clearly the voice of God. But we're constantly being invited into the potential of what and who we are as Christian people. And that means being the ones offering the food to others. It means being those tending the sheep, looking after each other, caring deeply for each other, seeking out ways to do this to people who may not be seen as one of us within the church. It's part of our core business as Christian people. Constantly reminding ourselves and others of who we are, because you know what, we will get lost along the way. We will lose track of why we're here and what it means to be followers of Christ. And this is why a life of prayer and a life of service is so important. And we've spoken before about that deep form of prayer. I'm not talking about sort of asking for things and expecting a result. I'm talking about laying bare and open before God. That deep type of prayer that really knows no words. Type of prayer that invites us to be exactly who we are before God. Type of prayer that doesn't allow us to hide behind things. If we're angry, then there's no point in us pretending that we're not. If we're hurting, there's no point in pretending we're not hurting. And if we have thoughts we wish we didn't, towards others or towards ourselves, then deep and true and honest prayer means laying that bare before God. Because we can try and fool God as much as we like. It's not going to work. We're only fooling ourselves. This is the deep and tough, life-giving work of what it means to be followers of Christ and disciples of God. So if we look at Revelations, our reading this morning, that great symbol of abundance, of joy, of celebration before God, the idea of an abundance which means we have so much to give to others, an abundance of grace which is poured out to us that our duty is to offer to all other people. That's our work in this Easter season. That's what we should be reminding ourselves of as we proclaim the resurrection of Christ every single day in our lives. The incarnation of God amongst all of us. It's a joy. It's a wonder. It's a challenge. And it's a mission for each and every single one of us. So we're called to be honest to ourselves, to be true to who we are, to understand when we've lost ourselves and seek to find it again. We're called to share that grace with all of those around us and come joyfully before God, praising and worshipping and giving thanks for these great, deep and important gifts that have been poured out upon each and every single one of us. In the name of God, the Creator, Redeemer and Sustainer,